Hey everyone, hope all is well. My name is Miles Dyer and welcome to the Quest for Global Empathy. For anyone who is watching this episode may notice that I'm a bit lighter than usual, and that's because you, the viewers, have given me some very, very necessary feedback that it usually looks like that I'm in a dark cave and I should probably turn the lights up on my face. So I've done that. I think this is a lot better. I can't do the show alone. And so feedback is always greatly appreciated. And if you are an audio listener, if there's ever something I can do to improve things on the sound front, then let me know as well. And speaking of support, in the last couple of days, it's amazing to see another wave of people become patrons on patreon.com/Miles Dyer to support the show financially. You can do it for as little as $1 a month. But if you want to watch the show recorded live, as Kevin is right now, hey Kevin, you can do that by getting a backstage pass. But I want to thank the new patrons, to Blizz, Kirsty, Kyle, Kevin and Kieran. And I know what you're thinking, 4 of those 5 names began with K. So strange, but to be honest, to Blizz is a username, so they may have been a 5th person beginning with K. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see when they let me know. Anyway, getting on with today's show, I am joined by my good friend Bryan Paul. He is founder and host of PSVR Without Parole, which is a YouTube show and vibrant community dedicated to Sony PlayStation's brilliant innovations in virtual reality technology and gaming. And he joins us now. Bryan, welcome to the Quest for Global Empathy.
Miles, thank you so much for having me here, man. This is great. I've seen your show a bunch of times. I've seen a lot of great interview ease on this, and I hope that I can fill some pretty big shoes, man. You've had some great people on this so far.
Dude, I just love having, friends, people from all walks of life on, because it is just about finding out where people have come from. Like, I think in your situation, the channel you run, PSVR Without Parole, it's a really good example of like how the internet has democratized media, because once upon a time it was if you had some massive broadcaster that you went to with an idea and they said, yeah, we'll do it, we'll put it on the air and see how it goes, and then after 6 episodes they'll then decide whether to recommission it or cut it. Whereas in your circumstance, you just keep grinding away, and if the community grows, you can then build with it there. But before we get on with this, I have to say it has been such a rush getting this podcast together, because I have an Apple Watch, so every month it gives you like a monthly special target, and mine for September, because we're recording this on the 30th, is to, for 3 days in September, do 200% of your energy burn target. So I have to burn 650 calories a day, so 200% of that is 1,300. So I did one of those days out of 3 mid-September, and then I thought I'll get the other 2 out the way towards the end. Yesterday I did one, and I was like, it leaves today, that's fine. All I've got is a bit of stuff to do for my band, and then we've got this in the evening at 11 o'clock at night, my time. And then it was 9 o'clock, and I thought, oh my God, I'm only at 200 calories. So I plugged in virtual reality Beat Saber, and nice. I did a session. Let's have a look at the stats here. This is so ridiculous. I did 1,080 calories in it. Total calories is 1,300, everything else. Average beat rate, 125. But yeah, it was in Beat Saber for 2 hours, 15 minutes. Virtual reality is so good for working out. So I'm feeling pumped, man. And it seems very, very right for a show in which we're probably going to be talking a lot about virtual reality, because that is what your show and channel is all about. But how did it even start? How did you get into the virtual reality world?
Oh, dude, completely by accident. It was not supposed to be that at all. Without Parole started forever ago, man, and it wasn't supposed to be anything that anybody even watched. Podcast Beyond, on IGN with Greg Miller and Colin Moriarty and Ryan, Andrew, all these people who were celebrities to me. I don't care about movie stars and even musicians. I'm a huge fan of different bands, but I could meet all my favorite artists and be like, hey, how's it going? I wouldn't be starstruck. But when I met Greg Miller and Colin Moriarty, I was totally starstruck. I was like, these guys are doing the thing that I would love to do.
And where did you meet him?
I went to Beyond 300 in San Francisco, just like an IGN event, because it was the 300th episode of my favorite thing on the face of the planet. Right? Podcast Beyond was, for a while, it was an actual podcast. It was just, you could only listen to it in audio form. That was before everybody started doing these things on video. And so,
And Beyond is just about PlayStation, right?
Just PlayStation, absolutely. And so, and I'll tell you that those guys started Beyond pretty much near the beginning of the PlayStation 3 era. Now, talk about tough times, right? There was months where nothing happened. There were months where we didn't have access to the PlayStation Network. Like, those guys were like, if you were a PlayStation fan, sometimes PlayStation had nothing for you, but Podcast Beyond was everything. So I would look forward. I think it was I want to say every Tuesday. And I was going through some really, really crazy shit back then. We can swear on your show, right? I never even.
Yeah.
I was going through some crazy stuff, and I was drinking too much, and really going through. Like pretty much the worst depression of my life. And it was dark days, man. Dark days, to the point where it's like the only thing sometimes that was like the only shining beacon in the darkness was Podcast Beyond on Tuesdays. And I hate just like making it this opaque and just saying it this way. But sometimes that was the only thing I had to look forward to. And sometimes that was the only thing that kept me going. And without getting too dark, I'm not even sure if I'd be here if it wasn't for their show. And so I wanted to do something because when I listened to them, I felt like I was part of the conversation. I was like, oh yeah, I was jumping in and like yelling at, like, listening to them in headphones and like yelling responses and being like, I am part of this show. And just because I felt like they were friends. And so I just wanted to do something like that. I was like, what can I do? Like, where can I make a audio podcast? And I was like, wait a minute, I need somebody to talk to first. I don't have any friends that are as crazy into video games as me. I was coming up on over 30 years old. A lot of my best friends from younger who played video games with me, grown up, got married, multiple kids, just don't have time for games anymore. So I put out a Craigslist ad. Do you guys have Craigslist over there?
Do you know? I think we might do, but we have like other versions. But Craigslist must be in the UK as well. I'd have to look it up.
It's basically just a like a want ads, like a giant want ads. It's like, I'm looking for a pet, I'm looking for a friend, I'm looking to hook up tonight. Like, I mean, it was like whatever you're trying to sell video games or a book or just wanted to talk about something. It was like this giant just like this giant service where you could post pretty much any ad you wanted to. And so I was like, well, let's use this thing for good. And so I said, hey, I want to start a video game podcast. Anybody in the area want to come over once a week and talk about video games and see what's up? So I put out a want ad for my first podcast, and that's how I met Mike Zeller, my first co-host. And so when we were trying to figure out how to, dude, by the way, Mike Zeller, dude sent me like a 3-page resume, and I was like, I don't think you understand. This doesn't pay anything. Like, right? And here we are all these years later, like it's still the exact same deal. Like, you want to be on the show, great. It doesn't pay anything. But he was like, no, that's fine. He's like, I just want to talk about video games. And so amazingly enough, when we're trying to figure out how to do podcasts and how to like upload to Apple and how to upload to all these other different services, it was really difficult. You had to fill out forms, and that might have been it. Like, I just didn't feel like filling out forms, but I couldn't figure it out. And I was like, this sounds really difficult. And so I ended up checking out YouTube, and YouTube made it insanely easy to do anything I wanted to do. And so I was like, all right, I'll just set up this crappy little GoPro camera. I like literally taped it to the wall. There was no screen on it because it was super duper cheap. And so I was just hoping that it was capturing us, that it was angled properly. And then I uploaded that to YouTube, and that's how Gaming Without Parole episode 1 happened. And
what year would that have been?
I think we're going on 6 years now. So probably 2015, early 2015.
Right, dude.
Yeah.
I was
looking all right.
Right. Yeah. I was just looking up the Craigslist thing. So in the UK we have Gumtree. That is what it's called over here.
Okay.
And it's eBay owned. I don't know if Craigslist in the US is owned by eBay. And I don't know.
No, I think it did get purchased by somebody eventually, but yeah, I don't really know. I don't know. There were some Craigslist scandals. It was like people, like people going for dates getting killed. So
yeah, right.
So things got pulled it back pretty quickly, and I'm not sure if it's widely used anymore.
Right. But the idea of putting something out there, because I've always thought about when you collaborate on projects, when it's doing podcasts and stuff like that, often people forget how easy it is just to ask. Often we don't have the confidence to ask. We think, in your case, it's just about video games, but there'll be lots of people like you that, we can kind of do it on our own, but at the end of the day, you do need someone to have a conversation with, for example. So a co-host is important. If you have, fans and supporters, someone that's good at graphics or things like that, they can chip in. And so like the importance of collaboration. And again, that's another good thing about the internet is because you're not doing it through broadcasters where they have their set teams already. You've got to use this person, that. You can just organically try stuff out and see if it works.
Absolutely, and that's what the last 6 or 7 years has been about, is experimenting, and figuring out not only what works for our audience. The audience has always been secondary. I hate saying that because it sounds like, oh, I don't care about the audience, but I always just wanted to do the thing that I wanted to do, and so I figured the audience would find us. If there were people out there that wanted to listen, then great. If not, then who cares? At least I get to do this thing and it's fun. And that was the point. I'm having fun. And if there's an audience, great. If there's not, then that's fine too. Like there's about 1 million. I would love to see the statistics on this actually, but I'm assuming there's probably 1 million new YouTube channels every single year, maybe more, right? There's probably hundreds of thousands a day. I can only imagine. Right. So the fact that anybody would watch anything I did wasn't even on the radar. I was like, dude, especially when you're covering every single video game and you don't have a real focus, there's millions of channels like that. Some successful, some not successful. So I didn't have any like grand aspirations to that. I was like, oh, I'm gonna be able to quit waiting tables and do this full time ever. That was never in the cards. Never. This is just supposed to be fun.
And you did leave your job to do this now.
I did. I think about, it's funny. It was actually just before the pandemic.
Wow.
I didn't even know, we didn't even have any idea the pandemic was coming. I just had this day at work where I was like, do you need me today? And they're like, no. And I was like, do you need me tomorrow? They're like, no, plenty of people are fighting for shifts. If you don't want to come in tomorrow. I was like, cool. Can I put my 2-week notice? And they're like, yeah. I was like, is there any chance you need me for the next 2 weeks? And they're like, you're fine. and so that was it. It was I decided kind of on the spot, and it wasn't like I was financially secure or anything. That wasn't the case. I was just like, well, I'm gonna take a gamble and try to live off savings and maybe sell some video games. And yeah, this is, I'm such a lifer. Like I'm not the kind of person that gets a job somewhere and then like looks for better opportunities ever. I'm like, I just want to be really good at the job that I have and keep doing that and exceeding at it. They kept trying to make me a manager, a bartender, and like I was like, no. I'm like, I can do all that stuff. I just don't want to. Like I want lowest level responsibility so that so I come in, I make my money, and I leave, and then that's it, man. Like I just want to go home and not think about anything. Which the crazy thing is, that's the greatest part about working for someone else, is that when you go to work, you do your job, and then you get home and you don't have to think about that job until you go back. And there are days, there are weeks, there are months that I miss that. It's where I'm just like, man, like I don't, every day that I get up, I go, the first thing I think of when I open my eyes is, what do I have to do today? And it's nonstop. It's nonstop. And so that's the double-sided, double-edged sword of working for yourself, is that, man, it's like you get to do the thing that you love, but until it becomes successful, you have to keep doing the thing you love day in, day out, and you don't get a break or vacation or days off. And if you don't really, really love that thing, well, you're going to find out really fast that you don't. Like, I know people who literally said, oh, I should start a YouTube channel to make a few extra bucks. And I was like, I can already tell you're going to fail, because that's, if that's your motivation is money, then you've already failed, because you're not going to make the kind of money that you want, especially for the time that you're about to put into it.
I'm glad you mentioned this, because it's a common point that I've spoken with previous guests about, and you see it a lot with people in the entertainment industry, comedians, when they're asked for advice. It's, you need to do it because you enjoy it, because firstly, the audience will detect that. And also, if you're doing something just for the views or just for the money, sooner or later, you're going to get down the line where you might be making more money, You might be, famous or lots of views, but you're going to have to pivot at some point because your integrity is eventually going to catch up that you are hating what you're doing. And some people can be lucky. Some people can pivot and use that audience to then leverage the project they want to do. But unless it's something that's somewhat relevant to what you were previously doing, they're not going to come with you because, especially on YouTube, people subscribe for specific things. We have so much choice that you subscribe to a channel for whatever it is. So for your channel, it's for people that play PlayStation virtual reality and they want to talk about games. And so, you might one day, well, you're not, but I was going to say one day you might be like, I've got another interest in my life. I don't know, it might be cars and I fancy doing that. Well, some of your audience might follow. I'm the same. I have no interest in cars. As long as it gets me from A to B, that's all that matters. But yeah, you'd have some people that go, oh, I like VR car games, so I might come along with you for this sort of stuff. But they're not always going to join you for that. So
yeah, sorry about the sirens on my end, but that was the fascinating thing for me. By the time that virtual reality came along, I mean, I don't think we even had 1,000 subscribers. I really, maybe we did, but it wasn't much, man. Like every video was 100, 200 views at most. It was pretty low on the YouTube totem pole scale. And and I was like, and so I remember when our PlayStation, my PlayStation VR showed up, and everybody came over and tried it. Jeremy, Michelle, all my co-hosts at the time. It was just revolutionary and changing, and it only took about a week or two before I was like, this is all I want to talk about. Like, I don't want to talk about anything else. And so, like, are you guys on board if we switch this over? And my co-hosts were totally on board. And I was like, we're about to lose all 1,000 subscribers. Like, no one's going to stick around for this. And I'm sure we lost a few, but there was no way I noticed, because like that's when things started taking off. Like everyone else who found PlayStation VR with me came along for the ride, and the subscriber count started shooting up back then. Like that was, it was like we were part of this like weird exclusive club. Like no one knew how great PSVR was because all the major media outlets were saying somewhat negative things about it. Which, I mean, I think you and I might have the same, might have had the same first experience, which was, it was mind blowing, right? And so it's like, what are these people even talking about? It's like, oh, it's not exactly what you wanted. I was like, how is this thing anything less than extraordinary?
It's so true. And it doesn't matter how much we try and pitch it to listeners and viewers today. Virtual reality, by its very nature, is something you will not appreciate until you've put a headset on. And it was interesting when I was speaking to a head of marketing for the game, the dance rhythm game, Synth Rider. He was saying that when you create commercials, for that very reason, it's hard. How do you sell the experience? Because in a weird way, when 3D televisions became the buzz, they were able to oversell it, because what would the commercial be? It'd be someone sat on their couch and all these shapes are coming out the TV and like floating around them, and they're like looking at him going, ooh. And it's like, you get a 3D TV, it's kind of cool, it pops out. You've not got shapes floating around you. Whereas in virtual reality, you are in this world. And the thing I always tell people as a starting point is you have two screens, one for each eye, and that is for depth perception. It's not just a screen really close to your face, it's one for each eye. So when you're in a room, you can see where the wall goes, you can see the depth of tables and the lighting. And there's a lot of games that the graphics aren't particularly great or realistic, but it's about immersion, and immersion is a cliche term, but often in life, things that are cliche because they're true. And immersion is what virtual reality is about, is you are present in a world, in an environment, and even if the aesthetic is not realistic, it doesn't look like a real world environment, the feeling of presence is real. You very much feel like that you're there. I would love for you to sort of give your pitch of like, what was it that first appealed to you about virtual reality? And, there's going to be people that, listening to this that, aren't even gamers, but virtual reality goes beyond just gaming as well, right?
It does, and every time someone goes, "Oh, this is going to be great for the medical field or the education field or this field or that field," I tune the fuck out. I'm like, I don't care. Like, like I'm really, really happy that it's going to have uses outside of gaming. But you know what? I don't care about any of the uses outside of gaming. Like, I've been a gamer since I was born. Like, all the way back to like the Atari 400 or whatever the first one was, ever since day one. And so the appeal to me was being 14 or 15 years old and watching The Lawnmower Man when it first came out and being like, wow, virtual reality looks cool. And then all these developers along the line, like I remember they were trying to get virtual reality up and running on the Atari Jaguar, on the Sega Genesis. Like,
What was Lawnmower Man? Sorry, I've got to stop you there. Like, yeah,
whoa,
whoa, I
really?
know. There's probably
Okay.
loads of the audience are screaming at me now.
Yeah. Oh, for sure, for sure. So, I mean, it was a short story by Stephen King initially, but then it became this major motion blockbuster movie. Again, when I was 15, so probably before you were born, I'm guessing. No, no, no. You were probably just super, super young at that time.
92 it came out, The Lawnmower Man, sci-fi horror.
When were you born?
87.
Okay, so you were like, yeah, 5. So it didn't quite have the impact on you that it had on me. It was basically about it was the first movie I can think of that really focused on was it had a focus on virtual reality, and it made this person who was very, very not smart, this guy who was pretty much only capable of mowing lawns for a living. I don't know if he had like a mental disability or anything like that, but basically they used virtual reality to make him smarter. But there was also all along the way they were playing a lot of games and having like virtual sex and things like that. I mean, it was crazy. It painted a very interesting future for virtual reality. They even had these tables that you lay down on and like you grab the handles and when you're flying through space, the table goes like this and moves with you. And I was like, this looks amazing. And now I'm like, I don't even want a treadmill. Like, I just want to keep it simple. Like, I don't need a moving table in my in my living room. Um, but yeah, it blew us all away back then. And so basically, I'd been waiting for virtual reality since I was 15 because of this movie. Um, and I think that if you missed out on that or Nick Arcade, I don't know if you remember Nickelodeon had the show Nick Arcade where like they would play video games and then the last part of it they were actually in the video game. And so these were all the things that kind of like made me go, wow, I wish I was inside a video game. And I think a lot of people grew up without that. I think a lot of people grew up and they were just like, oh yeah, this is what video games are. They're on my phone or they're on my tablet. And that's the extent of it, and didn't have any dreams or aspirations bigger than that. They're like, oh man, I can't wait for video games to get to this thing. It's like, no man, it's like I started video games were 2 pixels. Your character was 2 pixels, and then it became then it became a character, and then it became an animated character, and it became a better looking animated character, and it became a 3D animated character, and then it was like a realistic 3D animated character. And so as resolution and frame rates and just graphics in general get better, I feel like we hit a wall at some point around like the PS3 era, where things looked as good as I cared about them looking. Like I'm not a person that's like I need a 4K TV or an 8K TV and I need frames per second to reach 120 FPS. Like, I don't care, man. I don't care because the next big leap for me wasn't 720 to 1080p. That was the next big leap. Or like, ooh, let's get bigger open worlds. Once we had open worlds, man, once we had Fallout 3 running on PlayStation 3, like that was the epitome of open worlds for me. I feel like they haven't gotten better than that. Like that was the best. And so what's the next logical jump? Well, PS4, just faster frame rates, better resolution. PlayStation 5, faster frame rates, better. I'm like, I don't care anymore. So the next logical step was immersion, getting myself inside the game. And that's all I cared about. And so when PlayStation VR was announced, uh, I never did any of the PC stuff or any of the early uh, the early Oculus builds. The
Mm.
DK1 is the thing that everybody talks about. They're like, oh, that's when I got into virtual reality. No, no, I never tried virtual reality before I pre-ordered my PlayStation VR. Sony announced it. I pre-ordered it. Said, cross my fingers. I hope there's money in my bank account when Amazon ships it. There wasn't, and I almost canceled my pre-order. I was at the restaurant. We had 3 weeks that were just terrible in a row. I had like no money in my bank account, and I was like, when I get home tonight, I'm going to cancel my PlayStation VR pre-order because I just can't afford it. $400 plus I ordered, pre-ordered like 5 launch games, and I got home that night and it already shipped, and I was like, man. I was like, part of me was like relieved that I couldn't cancel it at that point, and then
Sure.
the part of me was like, I need to fucking make some money really
Yeah.
fast. So yeah, and unfortunately, while I was waiting for it to get delivered, I remember watching Kind of Funny and having Greg Miller and Colin Moriarty say, uh, "Keep your expectations low, man. Like things look blurry and it doesn't look that good, and things are wobbly, and things your controller moves the way in ways that it shouldn't. You might get sick." And I was like, "Woof, this sounds terrible. This sounds like pre-tech demo. This sounds like pre-beta. This sounds like maybe it wasn't ready for release yet." Um, so I got mine, and I don't know what I was really expecting, because I remember getting it all set up. There's like a million different wires in the breakout box, and it was just a total disaster. And then when I finally got it working, I put it on my head and I pushed the button, and I saw total darkness. But then I saw a rectangle, and it was the startup screen for the PlayStation 4. And when I looked left, that rectangle stayed there. Like no matter what, like.
Mm.
And I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that I wasn't just looking through the headset in a dark room at my television, because that's exactly where my television was in real space. Like my brain hadn't processed it yet. And so when I threw in a demo disc, um, and like it actually started up and kicked you into actual virtual reality, uh, the menu screen alone blew me away, because it was all like bathed in white, and it was all like these geometric shapes, and it was just, I was inside of this
Mm.
world that had been created for a menu screen. And I was like, oh, 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 this is virtual reality. Like I really am inside the game. It's not going to be a 3D TV. And I never thought it would be a 3D TV. But like I couldn't get my brain around the fact that like that maybe it would be everything I wanted it to be. And then when it was, I was like just totally absolutely blown away. It was, I mean, when I say game changing, I don't mean it to be hyperbolic um, or even self-referential when it comes to video games. I just mean like I just never wanted to play anything on a flat screen again. It
Mm.
was, it was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen in my life, and to think that anybody wasn't blown away by it. A menu screen. I hadn't even played a game yet, and I was like, "This is where I want to live."
Yeah,
Right.
it
And to
is.
think that anybody was less than impressed by even that, like, forget about how great the games are. I was just, I cannot, and still cannot understand why people are so hesitant to either try it, or when they try it, they're so ready to find fault with literally anything they can find fault with.
Yeah.
I'm just not there.
Yeah, I find that happens with a lot of tech stuff, like even Google Glass. It was a flop overall, or even Google Stadia, which was their cloud console. And there's this real sense of like vitriol of people wanting to see stuff fail, of like, oh, it was never ready and stuff. But I'm like, I actually appreciate companies that have a lot of money investing in tech, that even if this is the product that doesn't work, some stuff has to fail, but they would have learned stuff from it, and other companies will have learned from it. But I just wanted to touch upon two things, because you mentioned that movie, and it reminded me of something when I was a kid. We had a show in the UK called Nightmare, which I don't think was in the US. I'm just going to bring it
No,
up
but
on.
I love it
Oh,
already though.
okay. So let me bring this up on screen now. So this was it on. It was actually released the year I was born, so 1987. So what you did was you had this guy that had a mission for these kids, and he like summons them, and then a kid basically puts on this like helmet on, and he's in like this virtual space. Now it's not virtual reality for the kid, but his friends
Right.
can see him in a virtual space, and he's blind and he's got a bag, and they're saying like, turn to your right, take a step forward, and they would just go through this virtual world, and there'd be like these actors that would turn up. The old man is like, careful team, and then using riddles and stuff to like guide him. I don't know what that's meant to be in the wall. It's like a scary face or something, but there was always
Mhm.
one that scared me, where there was a gigantic spider. Oh, I don't know, I've lost it now, but Nightmare
No,
was.
yeah, that makes sense. Like that actually is very similar to Nick Arcade, because Nick Arcade, they didn't the kids in the game couldn't really see it either. It was very virtual reality for us watching at home, being like they're inside the game, but that was the extent of it. Really, it was like I'm sure they were just running around the giant green screen with little indicators of where to jump and where to do things.
And then my first experience with virtual reality was, we had Sega World in London. It was
Hmm.
this multi-story building where you basically paid money to go into an arcade that you then paid like $1 or a quid to go on these machines. But then you got these special coins to go on these amazing experiences. And one of them was a virtual reality. It was like a cinema, but everyone puts on a VR headset and you're in like these ships and then you're just shooting. You're all flying together and shooting stuff. Now, this was at least 20 years ago. And I bet you if I put that headset on now, it would make me feel so sick and the graphics would be absolutely abysmal. But at the time, it was just like, whoa. And it's kind of like VR where you're not looking all the way around, but just sort of in front. But it was really cool. And then when I was in Disney Orlando, they had like downtown Disney. It was this like market area. And then they had this place where you paid tokens to go in. And they had all these special rides. So one of them is like you design a roller coaster on a computer and then you go in a machine and then you ride that roller coaster. And when it goes upside down, you go upside down. It was amazing. Again, I was very little, so I probably didn't appreciate it as much as I wish I had. But then there was a couple of virtual reality games, one of which was where you had a lightsaber. And I think it was my brother was in this other area and we could see each other in it. Again, I bet you the graphics were terrible. I can't really remember, but I just remember how real it felt and the fact that you were sort of fighting together. So the fact that now you can do that in your living room, and you talk about, you know, what are the misgivings people have about VR or criticisms, and I agree there are some really cynical, like hardly giving it a go, just going, you know, not giving it a chance with the fact that it is new tech. But there are barriers to entry, one of which is, firstly, you want to try it before you play it, and there's not a lot of stores where you can really try VR. I really got into it because my brother had bought a Vive, a HTC Vive, which I think when it first came out was like over $1,000 or something, really expensive. And then you needed a computer to plug it into. So that would have cost, you know, thousands.
The Vive especially was crazy because you needed like a space to play. You needed to put up the sensors around the room, right?
Yes. I think they're called like light boxes. So yeah, you had to put these like 2 boxes in 2 corners of the room so that you then with your controller could map out like your play space. So this is the other thing I was going to mention, not just how expensive, but like you need a space to play it in. But fortunately with PlayStation, a lot of the games are made for sitting down. You just put a camera on top of your TV. It's all light sensors. So there are a lot of games where you can play sitting down or in a limited space, which is really, really great. But I can understand that for a lot of people, it's a big jump. And so for me, prior to COVID, whenever I had friends over, I'd always get the VR out, and I have a L-shaped couch, so everyone would have drinks while laughing at whoever's in the VR stuff, flailing their arms about. And I've mentioned this before when Anna Ribeiro, developer of Pixel Rip, was on, who is a connection, because the reason I discovered your channel or discovered her game was when I was searching for reviews of PlayStation VR games when I first got the console. And the first review I found was your review of her game, Pixel Ripped, 1989. You know, you'll be watching people flailing their arms about, and you think VR is a very isolating experience. You're putting a headset on, headphones preferably. It's all about you. But no, I absolutely love watching people in VR, because on the TV you can see what they see, and if it's a horror game and you're seeing them get scared, that's amazing. If it's a physical game and they're like really trying to box someone, and you know, there's lots of clips online of people trying it for the first time, and just seeing people's amazement when they first jump into VR, for me, is like one of the most amazing experiences. I mean, I love watching movies with people that I've seen before, knowing it's a funny movie or a scary movie, and I just love seeing that person like enjoy it the way that I did. Like, it's that shared experience, and I think VR is the most powerful version of that.
I think so too. You know, I actually haven't had the opportunity to share VR with as many people as I would like. I mean, a lot because of the pandemic, and a lot because I'm just, you know, sort of an introvert outside of the channel. I don't really like to go out and associate with other people if I don't have to. Like, all my best friends I haven't seen in probably 10 years, right? It's been a while. But one, I did see the craziest thing, and that was when I put my friend into, I think the first thing I put him into was Resident Evil 7.
Now I'm laughing because I know what this game is.
Right. It's the scariest thing of all time. If you
Yes.
haven't experienced it before, like on the flat screen, if your first experience with it is in VR, it's crazy, crazy, crazy scary. But he wanted to be scared. Like I was like, "Are you ready for this?" He's like, "Yeah, absolutely." And so I help him get the headset on, and he's using the controller, and he's walking. But I'm just kind of like watching him play, like from a distance, and just not. I don't want to be like, "Do this, do that, do that." No, it's like, let's see what he does. And he never turned his head for the at all for the first 2 minutes. And I was like, "Hey, stop for a second." I was like, "What?" I was like, "Turn your head to the left or right." And he goes, "Oh my god!" Like he didn't, because you get so
Yes.
trained that there's a television in front of you. You have to look forward, that you forget that like it's not just all around you. It's like you get to experience this world any way you want to. You can turn your head and look up and down, and it's all around you. And so that was like such a game changing moment for him, where he's like, "Oh, virtual reality is not just it's not just all around you. You can turn your head, and your head is now the camera in the game." Like, that was such an amazing moment to watch somebody realize that, because again, virtual reality is, I think everyone has different perception of what it's going to be, and until you get in there, like, you just don't really know if your perceptions are accurate or not. People can listen to you and I talk about it for hours, but until they put the headset on, that's when it's really going to come together for them and be like, "Oh, was I right about this, or wasn't I? Like, what is it really like? How does it really feel? What does it really look like?" So it's always an exciting moment to watch somebody. But dude, getting back to your point about isolation, VR being an isolating thing. I never really played multiplayer games very much before VR, and now I think playing multiplayer games in VR is amazing, because when I turn my head and look at somebody who's on my team, like, that person, it's an actual person, and he's moving his gun around, and like, we're looking at each other and talking, moving our heads around, and it just feels like that it's not just somebody's avatar. I feel like I'm looking at somebody, an actual person in a game. Even if it looks like a cartoon character sometimes, it
Even when they
really
don't have facial expressions, just seeing the nodding of the head. There's a game Chorix, which is this very low graphical game where
yeah.
the player is, you just see their controller floating about, and it's literally a mask, and it's one color, and it might be of a skull or an alien. So there's no expression, but when you're playing the game, your controller has a little laser on it as well, where you're pointing, and like, you could. My friend did it to me first, just so I'm not taking credit. But he put the laser in my eye. Now, it's not a real laser. It's not going to damage. But you see it flicker in your eye. And I'm like, what? And you can just see him like looking down, like as if I didn't see anything. I didn't see anything. And it's amazing how much expression can happen without any facial and that is something you feel in VR, because it's the depth perception. And there's that real connection there in these shared spaces.
Yeah. Yeah. For the first time playing multiplayer, like, it really humanizes the people you're either playing with or against, because that those people are doing the exact same thing you are, and that they are in the space. And so it really does feel like, if you play a game like Firewall, which for anybody who doesn't know is a 4v4 team-based shooter, just basically kill the other team.
It's like Swordsman,
I've never, when I actually take somebody down, like, it's way more satisfying than any other multiplayer game, because I'm like, I know what that person is doing. I know that they're standing in their living room with like this
Yes.
gun controller, and that they're trying to take me. There's something way more human about taking down enemies in VR, and also working with people in co-op humanizes all the other players in ways that flat screen just can't.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I also think it's really good for people that are introverted or have social anxiety when it comes to having social commitments. Like, normally you get invited to something. Even I'm not a hugely socially anxious person, but there have been many times where I'm invited to something, I'm up for it, and then on the day I'm not really feeling it, and I'm like, I don't want to let anyone down, and then I don't even want to get out of bed, and I'm just like, and sometimes I just flake off, and it's not great. Whereas with virtual reality, the barrier to entry, I don't have to travel anywhere. The sort of the thought gap between I want to, play with these people and actually doing it is just, to a certain degree. Some people have to set up the space, but it's just turning the console on and putting the headset on and going in a game. And you know, you can just spend as much time playing it as you want, because once it's done, you turn it off, you take the headset off, and then you're back at home. And you know, there are definitely things to be said about it's not the same as real life interaction. Real life interaction is important, and virtual reality is not a complete substitute. But I, especially during the pandemic, have noticed the benefits of it. I've seen, you know, games like Rec Room, which is this sort of like sandbox, lots of mini games like paintballing or rock climbing, and you're in these servers, and there are a lot of like young kids just running around playing with their friends, and you know, a lot of them are living in a very... Say again?
Drawing penises on the wall.
Oh, well, I haven't seen that.
every single time I just stop into Rec Room and like walk through the rec center, it's like there's just penises everywhere.
This is why we can't have nice things, you see.
But you're right. It's an active community, and there's a lot of people there. I will say, dude, about Rec Room, the Game Cat community is amazing, and they're always like throwing parties in Rec Room, and you would think that, hey, you've got this avatar, you've got this character that like you can hide all your feelings behind. So if you are socially anxious or whatever, then you would think that maybe this is good for you. I don't like parties. I don't like big groups of people, and when I go into Rec Room, dude, it's as if I'm in a room with like 30 people. If there's 30 people there, I feel like I'm like, oh man, I'm just gonna like back up over here and hang out and watch everyone else talk, because like I get really nervous. I get so much social anxiety that I'm just gonna go over here and draw a penis on the wall.
Oh, it was you, was it? I knew it.
Right?
Confession.
It's funny because it looks like a cartoon, man, but somehow I still have all the same reactions I would as if I walked into a room with 30 real people. 30. So it's amazing that your brain can associate things like that, where it was like, even though everybody looks like a cartoon, I still get the exact same feelings as if I walked into an actual party.
Right.
So it's pretty cool.
The immersion aspect, you know, touched upon, like, you know, depth perception with eyes, with your ears. When you're in a room, if you hear people talking to your left, they're there. That, you know, you can. It's the 3D audio, so there's a real, you know, as you turn your head. This is a really sort of odd example to give, but I think it's because it's such a peaceful game generally. Catch and Release is a fishing game, and I bought it recently, and it is amazing. You are on a boat, a rowing boat, in the middle of this lake. It is so peaceful, and if you want to go somewhere, you have to pick up the oars, and then you have to row to get somewhere. And there's a little radio in your boat, and you can turn it on and change the volume. And it was an example where I really thought about the audio, because I had like this nice country music playing, and as I'm looking around, it's in my right ear, but then as I look behind me, it's in my left ear, and you just get a real sense of depth. But the other thing I was going to mention about Rec Room, and the great thing about Rec Room is you have all these different things you can do, like rock climbing, and I mentioned it on the podcast with Anna before, but people can create their own rooms. And actually, speaking with Anna, I've always mentioned this story quite a few times before, but when her game launched last year, she texted me, it was like 11 o'clock at night, and saying, do you want to come to the launch party? And I was like, well, she's in Brazil. Clearly, she doesn't mean it's a physical event. And she gave a code to this private Rec Room, and we went there, and it was designed like their game. And I went into this space, and there were lots of people talking, and it was so noisy at the entrance. I could hear someone that I recognised, and it was Dave, who was a co-host on your show. And I was like, oh, hey, Dave. And he was like, oh, hey, Miles, come over here. So I sort of head over. And it was so noisy, we said, should we get a table in the corner? And so a group of us then walk over to the corner of this room like it's a real place. And Anna was telling me that there were gaming journalists there and everything. But she was telling me there were a lot of her developers there who might be incredibly introverted, socially anxious. She says there were some of them that wouldn't normally go to launch events, but they were there because they felt comfortable, and, you know, they could join when they wanted and leave. And I thought, that is so amazing. And another Rec Room, I guess you just meant to call them Rec Rooms. There was one that was made like a good old British pub. And so you go in, and there's a pool table. You can choose 8 or 9 ball pool. and then on the stage there is a microphone, and if you go to the microphone, because going back to the audio, it's what's it called, like proximity audio, what's it called, like, so it's not that when you speak wherever you're in the room you can hear people. If people are close, they sound close. If they're away, you might not be able to hear them. Whereas in this room, if you go on the stage and speak into the microphone, it comes out of speakers all around the room. So you could literally have a virtual comedy night. And I've seen it happen where they do virtual reality stand-up. So let's say you're someone that wants to practice stand-up, but you don't want to go into a city for like a, what's it called? Like
open mic night.
Open mic night, thank you. You can just do it in virtual reality with a few friends and stuff like that. And, you know, they have the public versions of all these rooms, but you can create a private one just for friends or just to practice. And like with a lot of things with the internet and technology, it just gives a lot of space for people to discover who they are and to learn skills. And without, I want to bring you back in on that part of the convo, but without derailing it too much, I think a lot about when I see local bands playing shows, I am seeing like teenagers playing guitar incredibly well, like at levels way beyond what most people were playing it when I was their age. And one of the main reasons why is when I was their age, the way you learned guitar was you got guitar lessons. You had to pay for guitar lessons.
Once a week, 30 minutes, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. 30 minutes a week, if that. And now you just get YouTube tutorials. You have apps on your phone that will show it. And I'll never forget YouTube doing a promo ages ago. And it was a story of, I can't remember what country, but it was about a kid that was in a very impoverished area, saw a YouTube video of, I think, like the javelin in the Olympics. And so they got a stick, fashioned it, and just started practicing it. And it just goes through this story. And in the end, they became a gold medalist in the Olympics. And they learned it all through the internet. And it's just like, it's the democratization of like opportunity. And I see virtual reality doing it. And you said a while ago, like, if it's anything other than gaming, I don't care. And I know you're being slightly facetious, but like, you played a virtual reality experience of Titanic. I've not played that one before, but you just go underwater and you're going around the Titanic. Like, I'm sure it's not entirely realistic, but is it an educational game, like, at all? Or
it's somewhat educational, but yeah, there's a lot of fiction thrown in there.
Okay, right. But that would be an example of, like, you know, the educational aspect of, you know, of VR. Like, they're talking about one of the future rovers that we send to Mars is going to be a 360 camera. I mean, they still kind of have it now, but they're basically planning on creating these environments where you will be able to put your virtual reality headset on and walk on Mars, because it will be simulated by, you know, we're not there yet, but it's on the moon is probably more likely, but being able to be transported to other worlds and have these variety of experiences. And it goes back to what I said about it reduces the opportunity gap of, do I have to go to a city or a town? Do I have enough money to travel there and get there? Now it's like, I might just give that a try and see what it is, because if I don't like it, it's fine, I can move on to the next thing. And that's what's happened with the music, you know, Spotify and all these on-demand like movie and TV shows. We're now able to try more things, and like because there's no risk. It's not, I'm going to the cinema now and paying a ticket, oh, what a waste of money. It's like, I can now look at reviews, I can now try it, and if I don't like the movie, I'll just go watch something else. So people are able to be more open-minded and experimental with their experiences.
Yeah, if you can believe it, like, you know, if somebody was like, oh, you can go walk around on Mars in virtual reality, I'd be like, you know what, I actually don't care. But you can right now with, I forget which headsets, maybe like a Quest 2 or a PC VR or whatever. You can go to Tokyo Game Show and walk around, and that's something I'm way more curious about, because I certainly can't get on a plane right now, and I certainly can't even afford to go to Tokyo and stay there for a few days, never mind getting into the show itself. And so being able to just put on a virtual reality headset and go to the Tokyo Game Show, you know, growing up, E3 was the biggest gaming show ever, but just even being able to get in was impossible for a lot of people, because you had to know somebody in the industry for years and years and years before they opened it up to the public. And so if they had the opportunity for people to be like, hey, throw this VR headset on and go to this big video game show, like that's, again, it does bring it back to video games for me, but it's an experience that um it's tangentially related to video games, right? Like I'm not playing a video game, so I do care about the other uses of VR. I think this is I think this is going to be the way forward. Why, you know, it used to be all the podcasts that we did here on Without Parole, everybody was in the same room for, and now, now everything is done with webcams,
Yes.
right? And so I think people are realizing that you don't need to always travel or always be in the same room to get the same experience. And I think that's one of these things that virtual reality is doing extremely well, because not only is it better than just looking at it something on a flat screen, you're actually going to be there at Tokyo Game Show and experience these exhibits in first person, firsthand. So I think that's the next logical step.
So for you to be interested in going to Mars, it needs to be like you can paintball on Mars.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, like I can't imagine anything interesting is happening on Mars right now. Like
There's aliens, mate. Lots of aliens.
dude, if the aliens, I don't know. I can't imagine.
You're right, though. I think you're right. In terms of, we talk about like the opportunity barrier to experiences, the sell is going to be you can stand on Mars, look around a desert for
Right.
how long? I mean, it might be quite meditative, but you're right. There has to be engagement, and that's the same with a lot of content. There has to be things to do. And the range of experiences with VR is only going to broaden in time. I'm going to have to ask you, you mentioned about Resident Evil 7.
Yeah.
We've spoken between us a lot before, because you've played it more than a handful of times, whereas me, I've still not got through it. And actually, on my weekly live show, I do on Wednesdays. Every week, it's a different topic, and then the last Wednesday of the month is like an open free for all Q&A. So not the last Wednesday of October, but the one before, we're going to do horror games in VR. I'm going to do on my live stream, and I'm both really excited to do it because I know it's going to be amazing, but I'm also dreading it because I am such a scaredy cat in VR. It's this whole thing of like, when I'm in these horror games, I know it's not real, but the immersion, it feels real. And, I can watch, I love horror movies. Again, certain movies I think get to me more than others because I have a real vivid imagination. But I think why we like horror as human beings is the catharsis. It's being able to experience the adrenaline, the fear, with the assurance that there is no real threat.
Right.
And when it's on a screen, it's there. It's on a screen. But if it's something that deals with issues that feel realistic or play on your imagination, okay, it's no longer just on a screen. It's now following you to bed, and then you're lying there and you're just thinking about what's going to be tapping at the doors and stuff like that. Virtual reality, though, you are in a space, and we've spoken before about, Resident Evil 7, you use your DualShock controller, so it's, both hands are on a controller, and you press buttons to do certain stuff, whereas a lot of games, and Resident Evil 7 wasn't made as a virtual reality game, as you said, it was made as a flat screen game and got ported to VR very well, whereas other games, for the PlayStation, it'll be Move controllers, so you have one for each hand, and I was saying how we can see it both ways, that because it's a DualShock controller and your hands are sort of tied together, there's this kind of like, the lack of mobility means you don't feel like you could even cover your eyes. I mean, in VR, it's not like a movie that when you're scared you can cover your face, because if you cover your face in VR, you're still going to see stuff because the headset is there. But even though it's not real, I think it's I think it's when stuff gets really close to you, that's what really gets to me. It's like it's in your personal space, because that is an evolutionary thing. That is something that you don't experience in horror movies. Jump scares probably play into that a bit, which is the sudden surprise is psychologically in your personal space because it wasn't there and then it is, and you're trying to comprehend where is the threat. And so in VR, there must be something there to do with the fact that no, stuff can be there and it looks like it's actually there.
What's funny is that I gravitate to horror so much because it's one of the last things that still gets to me. I feel like romantic movies. I'm never feeling the things that they want me to feel. I'm never like, oh, these two need to fall in love. No, never. Comedies. I'm notorious for only liking the weirdest comedy. Like I only like stand-up comedy because that's the only kind of comedy that makes me laugh. I think that's like the only real pure form of comedy left. I think comedy movies are just mostly garbage these days. And so like I don't like watching comedies.
I'm the same as you. I mean, some sketch comedy, like online sketches and stuff, I find funny, but there'll be individual sketches. But you're right, stand-up tends to be the only thing I watch comedy-wise.
So as far as like horror goes, it's so funny that I still feel the same as I did when I was 10. Like I'm when I was 10, I remember my parents gave me, because I begged them for this. I had a tiny little television in my room. It was only like literally this big, and it sat next to my
When
bed.
TVs were square.
Right, and they were just as the depth of them was equal to the width and height of them.
They were boxes.
Huge.
They were actual boxes.
Yeah. And so it was like next to my bed. It was tiny, and all I wanted for Christmas that year was a VCR. Because that was that's how we watched movies when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And they gave me a VCR, and knowing that I liked horror movies, they gave me Halloween 1. And I had never even heard of Halloween because I was 10, and there wasn't an internet for me to check like what are good horror movies, and I didn't have friends that watched horror movies, so I was so isolated. And I grew up in the country, which is why I never want to live in the country ever again, because it's terrible. I don't know why anyone would do that. And so here I am thinking that my parents probably got me like this bargain bin budget horror movie that they got it like $2 bin or something. Halloween, like what a generic name. Obviously growing up and realizing what a huge franchise it was even at that time, and then eventually, even bigger became later in life. I was obviously very wrong, but man, when I was 10, I promise you this is going somewhere. I watched horror movies in my bed. My feet had to be covered by the blanket so that no one could grab them, right? And with all the lights off and cuddled up under the blanket, like that. And somehow, 32 years later, that is still my preferred way. If I'm not going to watch a movie in a movie theater, which I obviously the best way to do it, but if I'm going to watch a movie at home, that's how I want to do it. It's like feet covered, bundled up in a blanket, all the lights off. Turn off the cell phone because that's going to distract you, right? Like just make sure that this is the only thing in your life. But it's still movies still terrify me the same way that they did when I was 10. Horror somehow is the only thing that I didn't get numb to over the course of my life. Like I became numb to romance, I became numb to comedy, I became numb to everything. But horror still affects me the same way. And so take that a step further and then put yourself into a scary world, a scary environment in a virtual reality headset. And it is literally the most terrifying thing on the face of the planet. Like,
Agreed.
and I have had some terrifying things happen to me in my real life. And somehow Resident Evil 7 in virtual reality is still the scariest thing I've ever been through. Ever. Like I've had, man, I keep bringing up things that like I feel like should be their own shows. but I've had a gun pointed at my head before. In Resident
I have
Evil
too.
7.
All right, we should
It's
share
still
these stories. We should share these stories.
I don't know if we should do it live, but but Resident Evil 7 is somehow still scarier than that moment. I was like in that, like, because nothing in the game can actually hurt you. That like intellectually, but when you're playing, it's so hard to convince yourself of that. It's so hard to convince yourself of that. Whereas when I was playing RE7, I'd take off the headset every 10 minutes and go, it's only a game. It's only a game. You're fine. You're fine. You're fine. I put it back on and immediately be terrified again. Like it couldn't convince myself that nothing could harm me. It was so convincing.
For people that haven't played Resident Evil 7, because Resident Evil is always known as like a zombie game, but like RE7 just feels very much like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's like a wooden house in the middle of nowhere. I mean, the opening half an hour is just brilliant. And when I got my dad to play it, and I remember when he took the headset off, he was like, he was genuinely shaken. And I said to him, I'm glad you've experienced that. And he was like, oh, thanks. And I was like, no, because I wanted you to know what I meant about, because he liked horror movies. We used to watch them growing up and stuff, but I was like, I wanted you to see like what the next step is. But when I show people horror games, I always make something absolutely clear. If you've had enough at any point, say, and the headset comes off, like, I do feel there's this real moral responsibility of, if people get jumped and stuff like that, it's like, yeah, play along with it. But if there are people going like, I'm sorry, I've had enough, it's like, fair enough. And I think giving people that reassurance is important. You're sort of in this abandoned house, and it's just like really dark. And there were some times I was walking down a corridor, and I'd be just looking at the wall, shuffling along, because I just didn't want to look what was there. And it is just the most incredible experience. And I might be playing it again later this in October. But you don't have to. You're not able to tell this gun story live?
I mean, I think a lot of people who follow the channel know that I had like a really, really kind of rough past. A lot of people I know, a lot of my friends, a couple of my exes, my soulmate. A lot of people are just dead in my life. They just didn't make it through the tough times that I made it through. And so it gets a little bit emotional. I miss all these people. And part of that goes into the fact that for a while I was dealing drugs. I was doing a lot of drugs, and I was dealing drugs. But I was always like the good guy drug dealer, right? Like I cared about people. I was like, hey, listen, if you take this pill, or if you do this or whatever, and you have any problems, just call me, and I'll come over and make sure that you're okay. And I always warned them. I was like, make sure you have enough water and do this and that, whatever. Like I was the drug dealer that cared. I convinced myself of that anyway. And but that only goes so far, like nice guy drug dealers, are people that get guns pulled on them because I'm a nice guy, and and I want to make sure that everyone's okay. And then the next thing you know, like things get a little out of hand. Too many people find out what you're doing, and find out that there's no security. People come over and like they give me money, and I give them drugs, and the next thing you know, I've got a gun pointed at my head, being like, "Give me everything." Yeah,
that's ruthless. I'm okay. I didn't know that, and that's wow. So like, and we don't have to go into detail about it, but I'm just curious to know, like, how did you end up getting down? Was it because of where you lived? Was it friends, or like what? Is it one of those things that you look back on, it was just this slow, slippery slope of like, oh, I'll just try this, and then you get into this world, and then it's like, well, I'm just going to keep doing it, kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little of everything. I mean, I think, I was always very, very curious about drugs, and it's interesting. I always thought that if the things you're doing are natural, if you're smoking weed or doing mushrooms, you're fine. That was always my opinion. And I was like, and I didn't even drink until I was 19, I think. And then one of my buddies at school was like, Bryan, I love hanging out with you. His name was Bryan too. He's like, I love hanging out with you. He's like, but like, it's like, I don't have a drinking buddy. He's like, we smoke pot all the time. It's like, I was like, all right, man. It's like, fine. It's like, you want to drink? Let's drink. And so we got like a 30 pack of Bush, which if you don't know, it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible beer. But we were both underage. So we're like, we'll just take whatever we can afford and whatever somebody will buy for us. And I was like, so I'm like, how do you drink beer? Like, show me. I literally was like, how do you drink beer? Mm-hmm. Because I was like, do you pound them, or like, do you just sip on them? Like, what? Like, how many? What's our goal for tonight? Like, I mean, like, you want a drinking buddy? Like, let's do this.
My theory on beer, by the way, is that beer. No one likes beer at first. You learn to like it. Did you like to take? I never liked it at first.
Yeah,
I'm convinced if beer didn't exist and it was introduced today, it wouldn't take off. It tastes hot. I think that's my theory. I think it's just something that people get a taste for.
Well, and let's be honest, man. Like when people say they just drink beer for the taste, when people say that they, like, oh, this one is hoppy, this one is, but I'm like, you wouldn't be drinking it if it didn't fuck you up. Like that's the real measure here, right? It's because otherwise you drink something that tasted good. Like why? I don't understand, right? If it doesn't give you a buzz, then you're probably not gonna. Pardon me, tornado. Excuse me. So I don't. I remember he was just like, oh, just pound it, and I was like, all right, and I was like, ding, 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 and like within 5 seconds, I pounded my first beer, and I was like, that was easy, give me another one, and that
You
and
call
so
it
that
pounded over there, so pounded means chug. Yeah,
okay, yeah,
just
totally.
American thing. I like it. Pounded.
Yeah. And he was like, wow, he's like, I didn't expect you to be able to do that. And so like I got this weird confidence. It was like, oh, I can pound beers, and that's not something everyone can do. I didn't realize. I was like, give me another one. And before I knew it, I'd had quite a few. And that's how I always drank from that point on. I never
Wow.
drank casually ever. So almost from day one, I was just an alcoholic. And so that was a good chunk of my life. And I quickly learned that cheap vodka was way, way, way cheaper if you're going to drink that much. Like I could get a handle of vodka that would last me 3 days. And it was like $10 if you get the cheapest kind you can get. And I was like, this is the way to live right here. And then on top of that, I learned, well, why even bother mixing it with things? And so you'd always see me walking around like school or parties or anywhere, like with just like a bottle of vodka, glug, 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 glug. And that was me, man. Like that was me for like
How you can drink it
20
straight.
years. Yes,
I've
just drink it straight, and I loved it. The way that the first sip of vodka or the first pull off the bottle, when you wake up or later in the day, whenever your first pull is, I remember it would burn going down, and then I would get this chill that went up my spine that just made me feel great, and I was like, this is what I needed today. And it was better than coffee. It was better than drugs. It was better than anything, and it just made me feel good. And so I always drank to get drunk, and I was pretty much drunk for 20 years of my life. Um, and so and anybody that hung out with me was generally trying to keep up with me, and that didn't end well for some people, unfortunately. Yeah,
Man.
yeah,
I mean, I think when it comes to alcohol and drugs, it is a slippery slope, and a lot of it is because it's so taboo in a lot of ways that there's no longer honest conversations about it. So like drugs is a great example. This idea of like everyone says drugs is bad, but most people have tried them, and because
right.
it's illegal, there's no control on how good the quality is. And so drugs for me is always an interesting one because if someone ever asks me, have you done drugs? The answer is yes. I've done all kinds. I smoked weed when I was sort of at school, and then I did mushrooms a couple of times, which were great experiences, but I wouldn't do them again. And then at a few festivals, I tried all sorts. And I think the last time I actually did drugs was, it was like 15 years ago, and it was at one festival, and I was treating it like a buffet. I was trying things left, right, and centre, and I'd mixed up so many things that I like projectile vomited. I and then I just crawled in my tent and like in the fetal position, and I like totally out of it. I was like, I hope I haven't done something wrong. And then I went to sleep. I was fine, but it was kind of scary. And
Yeah.
what I was going to say was that when people say to me like, would you recommend doing drugs? In the back of my mind, I'm like, I'm glad I experimented with drugs, and that's what I did. I experimented. Some people go, yeah, I experiment every week. No, that's more than experimenting. That's like a lifestyle.
Right.
But I can never recommend it to someone because I don't know what's in it. Like, there's no control over what's in the substance, and also, different stuff does stuff for different people. And you hear stuff like heroin. If heroin is pure and clean and properly done, it's a lot less dangerous than other drugs that you would think are easier. If alcohol was, ranked on how dangerous it is, it'd be a Class A drug, and stuff like ecstasy might be a Class B or C, as we'd rank it over here. So, because it is so taboo, it's kind of like when you hear like teachers or politicians going, drugs are bad, it's a criminal lifestyle. You kind of hear it with a nudge and a wink, kind of like, but we've done it. It's all right for us. And there's a lot of conversations at the moment about like this middle class lifestyle that, there's all these people that are middle class that are doing drugs, and, the chain of which they've got the drugs started off with someone being manipulated or, taken advantage of, because the drug gangs where it's sourced from and stuff like that, it's a brutal lifestyle for many parts, and it destroys lives.
See, I feel like people aren't having honest conversations, or at least when I was growing up, I feel like I didn't get even the wink and the nudge, any of that. It was commercials that were in black and white with this guy living in a destitute, like just absolute worst conditions ever, with like this dirty mattress that's on the floor, and he's just like, things were fine before I started doing drugs. And I was like, wow, drugs look awful. Why would anybody do drugs? And then one time we all decided to go to a Pink Floyd Roger Waters show, and they were like, here, take this, and it was the tiniest little pill that I'd ever seen in my entire life. They called this it was ecstasy. It was this particular one, they called it kryptonite, and it was literally the tiniest pill I'd ever seen. Like even like prescription drugs, aspirin. I mean, I've never seen something this small. And so, like I said, up to a point, I was like, oh yeah, if it's natural, I'll do it. And I was like, well, this is definitely not natural, but it's also so tiny. How much could it possibly do to me? And that was my rationale. I was in a car, and and everybody else was taking it. It didn't feel like peer pressure. I wanted to see what it was like, but also I was like, there's no way this can do anything to me. So let's do this. And we're going to go see Roger Waters. I was like, fucking Pink Floyd, man! Like, what a time to do it.
Yeah.
And it was, and so I was in my head. I was wrestling with basically having the greatest night of my life, feeling better in my own skin than I'd ever felt in my entire life. Whenever a breeze would go by, it was the greatest feeling I'd ever felt in my life. We finally found somebody selling water. Water had never tasted better. And everything just looked amazing, and we were just like loving each other. And like I gave my best friend a hug, and it was like, again, the greatest feeling. I've got a great story for this, by the way, if you want to keep going on the Roger Waters story.
Please.
But the it was the greatest feeling. So, but I'm wrestling like these two images in my head growing up. This guy in an apartment, black and white commercial with a dirty mattress on the floor, versus this colorful, amazing, trippy, beautiful Roger Waters playing on stage experience. I'm like, dude, you couldn't get two radically different experiences, right? This guy's all by himself, and I'm with my friends, and we're all having a good time. Like there was no connection. And I was like, I've been lied to my whole life. Drugs are actually great.
Right.
And so I felt like I discovered something. I found out that I've been lied to. And so I was like, again, hey, I'm suddenly part of a secret club that we all realize drugs are great. The government doesn't want you doing them. Right. So now I think I've just been lied to my whole life. But, the funny thing is that, yeah, if you go down that path long enough, you do end up like that black and white guy in the dirty apartment with the mattress on the floor. So there's an element of truth there, but like that's not what you're thinking when you first try this.
There's no context.
No. Like they should start that commercial with me at Roger Waters going, this is amazing. Like to kind of do the before and after, like to give you an idea of like, oh yes, no, drugs are amazing, but this is what they can lead to. They can lead to a lot of bad stuff. And so you're right. No context was a big issue for me. By the way, that was greatest concert of all time. Greatest concert. Like my friends trying to be like, whoa, what do we do? Like, what should we do? Like we're on ecstasy. Like I don't understand. Like this, everything feels good. And then so like I hugged my best friend, and he was like, if that felt good, I wonder what a kiss would feel like. And I was like, listen, you're on your own, buddy. Like, keep it moving. I'm not touching you. Like, we're best friends. I'm not kissing you. That'd be weird. And I was like, go find a girl, man. There's like plenty of people here. And he's like, that's a great idea. And now we're like sweating and like we probably look disgusting. So I was like, yeah, going to find a girl at a concert while you're on drugs. That's a great idea.
Dude, it reminds me of when I was at this rock festival, Download Festival. It was like 2006, I think it was. And I was given half an E-tablet. Never done it before. Did it. And I saw Porcupine Tree. Do you know Porcupine Tree? They're prog band. Oh, man, definitely check them out. And I was in love. It was in the MySpace days where you used to have the MySpace player and played like the 4 tracks. Blackest Eyes, I think it was called, and they came on and played. Oh my god! And I was coming up, and I obviously had never experienced it before. It was the most like it's your ears tune in. It's the new sensory experiences of like you hear sounds in ways that you haven't before, and they were just a brilliant band anyway. It was amazing. And then after them was a band that I've always liked. I'm friends with the vocalist. I'm not going to mention the band now, but they played and I was coming down, and I remember watching them going, this is great, but I'm feeling really sad. Like, I don't know what is happening in this performance. And it was just a really interesting process. And then the other drug I've done was MDMA, which is ecstasy with like ketamine, horse tranquilizer, and you snort it. And it was the only thing I've ever snorted before. And
Is that what they call MDMA over there?
yeah.
Wow, over here MDMA it's just the active drug in ecstasy, and it's like a pure form of ecstasy. It's not mixed with anything over here.
So
If it
I
is,
could
then
be.
yeah.
Yeah, I could be completely wrong. But I was speaking to someone who was saying that they were like working at a clinic or something, or they were involved in one. Maybe they were saying they worked there to say they didn't attend it, but they basically got people to raise their hands of like MDMA who here gave you the best sex life ever, and half people put their hands up. And then who it did it absolutely ruin, and the other half put their hands up because they could never have sex that good again because it was such an amazing experience. But I remember being at this party and I just wanted to hug everyone. And there was someone I was chatting with, and we went into, it was like an apartment party, and right by the front door there was this cupboard, kind of like just behind me there, and it was a coat rack and shoes. And me and this girl just went in there and we just sat down. It was like being in a forest. And nothing happened between us other than we were just chatting, had a really good convo. And then we left and came out and everyone was like, Miles, where the hell have you been? I was like, I was just in the shoe cupboard. They were like, for 2 hours. And I was like, it's not been 2 hours. And it was just amazing. But MDMA, the worst hangover ever, like really intense headache and... when it comes to drug taking, and look, I really want to be cautious and responsible when talking about this. Like, I'm laughing about it, I'm smiley because it was fun experiences. It's not to glorify drug taking, like, and it's why I take it incredibly seriously, which is I made decisions and they were my decisions. You can argue that I wasn't educated and, I should be more careful here and that. Yeah, life is about risks and rewards, and you've got to, and when you're young, sometimes you're not mature and you make wrong decisions. And so I don't want this to be an endorsement of people should go out there and try these things. Like, I would never recommend drugs just because until things are legalized, we don't know what's in them. And as you say, sometimes people take stuff that has the wrong stuff in it, or it doesn't work with their body. And that can be it. I mean, slightly different, but I worked... in France for 6 months at a ski resort when I finished school, secondary school, and before I went to university. It was just before I started YouTube 15 years ago. And you got given this talk at this ski resort. You're up, very unnatural for humans to be at the top of this mountain, and yet you've got this civilization, you've got bars, you've got everything. And the talk that you got is, when you go out, you always be with people, because every season there would be people that go to a bar, they get drunk, they might leave their coat behind because you got alcohol, you don't feel the cold. They go walking across the piece of their apartment, they fall over in the snow drunk. In 10 minutes, they're dead, stone, because the cold just eats you away. And that is the talk that you have. And it's like, that's just alcohol. And it goes back to the context of, there are things that might seem fine, but if it's that thing that is the wrong mistake, that could be it. That could change your life forever. And so, me and Bryan are, obviously keeping this in mind, but, we're very much like, these aren't endorsements, but more just sharing our experiences.
Yeah. The crazy thing is, like, I can feel my heart racing a little bit just talking about this stuff, because I have, a lot of, obviously we tell a lot of fun stories and say, so happy I did this or whatever. But ultimately, the feeling I get from recounting these stories and for all of these, because it wasn't a day or two, it wasn't a month or a couple months, it was years and years and years and years and years and years of my life that, like, A, I'm not getting back, and B, again, I lost a lot of very, very close people during, and on top of that, like, a lot of the time was scary. A lot of the time was really scary. It was like, what are we doing taking, our seventh pill at 4:00 in the morning, at the, while we're tripping on acid? Like, what's the number of times, like, we drove in that state of mind, the number of times that, I laid in bed at night, watching the sheet or the comforter on top of me do this on my chest because my heart was practically beating through my chest and I didn't know if I was going to make it to the
Right.
next morning. Right. Uh, at that point, like there's so many memories like that that just twist my stomach up when we talk about this stuff. That it's like it's easy to talk about the fun times,
Sure.
but but there were just as many, if not more, bad times. So so yeah, that's certainly something to keep in mind. I definitely I'm not an endorser of drugs. Um, you know, I really I kind of wish I could get some of those 20 years back, man. I wish I could get almost all of them back because I feel like I didn't start my life until about 6 years ago. Sometimes.
It's interesting you say that because I feel very much the same. So, how old are you now?
Just turned 42.
Okay. So I'm 34 and I feel that my life only just started maybe 4 years ago, and it was because I dealt with a lot of shit in my life. And when it comes to it, like, I've never been in a situation where I've been dealing with threats of violence with guns. The gun story I had, it was with a random who was drunk, and it was in LA, and we went to pick someone up that had. I mean, I'll go through the story quickly. Basically, I was visiting LA, a friend out there who I knew off YouTube, and there was a couple of girls that he knew that we went out for drinks with, and at that time I was 19, 20, so I wasn't the age for drinking, and it was weird because I could drink in the UK and then I couldn't drink here, and so I'm going to all these bars where they're like drinking outside, and I'm at the other side of the fence talking to them, and they're like, "You got to go, you can't just stay there like a stray dog or something." And so one of the girls knew a bar. Their friend worked at a bar, so we went to this bar after closing hours, and it was lockdown. And we're in this bar. It felt like it was in the movies, and there was this big guy slouched over the bar that had way too many to drink, and it was just like a movie. She was like, "You've had too many, pal. It's time to go." And he started chatting up one of the girls that we were with, and we were all quite drunk, and she was like, "Oh, he's asking me to come back to his place. He's got a nice place. I think I'm going to go." And we're like, "You should not go. Do not do this." She's like, "Yeah, no, I think I will. I think I will." And in hindsight, I'm 19. I should have stepped in more. I have regret about that, but kind of her friend was like, "No, leave her. She does this all the time," sort of stuff. So she went back. This guy who was driving home, again, bad responsibility to let that happen. And then we go back to her place. So we go back. This is in Hollywood, and funnily enough, the house they lived at was opposite where Charles Manson did the murders. So like, you look outside the house and you see this house on the hill, and it was like that was really, really, really eerie. Not relevant to the story though. So we get back.
But still worth
It's
telling.
still cool. Yeah. And so we get back, and like within moments of getting back, we get a call, and it's from her, and she's like, "You got to come pick me up. This guy's freaking out. He's, okay." So the three of us are heading back. I'm in the passenger seat. So I'm in the UK. Passenger seat would be on the left, but I'm on the right side of the front of the car, just thinking it out loud. And we park at downtown LA, and I see her rush out the apartment. She comes over, walks in front of the car, round the bonnet, hugs her friend. I then look to my right, and the guy that was in the house, he's there with this jacket on, and he literally reaches into his jacket, and he just pulls out a gun, a pistol, and I'm looking down the barrel. Now, at the time, it's the whole... I've like studied in criminology, the psychology of like looking at weapons and stuff, and like often when you freeze, not because of fear, but because you're not actually processing what you're seeing. So I've never seen a gun held at, like, I was literally looking down a barrel, and it's one of those stories that in hindsight is more scary because not only was the safety not on, but his finger was on the trigger and he was drunk. And what we found out, he then put it away and said, "I was only joking." But when we got back, the reason she called was because he was showing off his gun in the apartment, and he put 3 bullets through his couch. So the scary what ifs are things that really play on your mind in that situation. And right. Thinking about like regrets and stuff like that, I remember the last day of secondary school, there was a party at some friend's house.
Can you remind me what secondary school is?
Sorry, so that's high school. Yeah. So it would finish at and then you've got like sixth form, which is like the final 2 years, which is like 17 and 18. So we're at this party, and it was, oh man, I'm just thinking about it now. It was so weird. So in the party, everyone's been parked outside one side the road, and I remember we'd ordered pizza and we're like sitting on the front lawn, and then out of nowhere we sort of hear this bang, and then we see this car like literally on smoke. The inside of the car was on smoke, everything just sort of slowing down in front, and this guy comes out, he's got a nosebleed, and basically he'd driven down the road and he just like clipped one of the cars on the side, and it was just, we're all quite drunk and it's a bit crazy. And then one of the guys we were with, he was being incredibly like bullied that night, and he was not doing well, and he was like, I need to go. And it was like, how are you going to get home? He's like, oh, I drove here. This guy was drunk, and I was like, dude, you can't go. And so he was not listening. He was going to get in the car, couldn't stop him or anything. So I got in the car with him, and I was holding the steering wheel for some of the journey home, and he got back all right. But there was one bit where we almost took the car totally off the road. This is like 3 a.m. Fortunately, the roads were empty, but I was trying to do the right thing as sort of an 18-year-old, but I was incredibly naive, and in hindsight, I don't know what I should have done. I should have probably reported him or stuff like that, but I look back with deep regret on that sort of stuff as well. But the final thing I was going to mention, because we're just sort of having these sort of confessions of regrets, and I think it's good for especially younger audiences of like, Bryan's doing amazing stuff with his PlayStation VR show now. He's like basically running his own business that's crowdfunding. It's bringing so much joy to people, and hundreds of people out there that, you know, are connecting in community. And Bryan's always, you know, upbeat, always there. When I do my videos, I'm always very smiley in that. But we all have stuff that happened in our past. Some of it can be painful. Some things might be deemed worse for someone more than others, but then pain is relative. If it happens to you and it's painful, then it matters. And this is all going back to you saying about when you felt your life restarted. In the latter half of my 20s, when I had my head injury, every aspect of my life had to restart. Friendships, like I was at home recovering, so I wasn't seeing people anymore. My work stopped. I stopped making videos, fitness, everything stopped. And I developed an addiction, and it wasn't drugs or alcohol related. And I've actually never spoken publicly about this before, but it was campsites. Like campsites that are done by sex workers, where you go on cam and you pay money to speak to them for so many, you know, don't know, it's like $5 for a minute. But I didn't go on there for pornography or anything like that, which most of it was for. I went on there just to have conversations with people, because throughout my life I've always been, you know, wanting to look out for people and stuff. And I'd go in these sites and I'd have really interesting conversations. A lot of the time they wouldn't want to chat to you because they're like, oh, it's just some guy that's just trying to get free chats and stuff like this. But sometimes I would have conversations, and I realized that, you know, I was chatting with people that were in very desperate situations, and I would say like, how much do you need to, you know, get through the day and stuff? And they'd be like, I need 100 or something like that. And I would just send them it. And it was because at that time I was so isolated at home because of my head injury, and like everything had stopped in my life. I was incredibly depressed. I didn't know all this at the time. I didn't even think of it as an addiction until I got therapy years later. And the reason it became an addiction was because I started going through a cycle where I was making decent money at a well-paid job, but it got to a point where I would, one night, chat into the early hours, sometimes drunk, spend hundreds of dollars, you know, just saying, oh, I'll just chat to this person for 10 more minutes, stuff like that. And then it's like my bank, and it's like I'm not even a week into the month yet, and I'm running out of money. And there were some times where the water got cut off in my house. Sometimes I couldn't afford food for work, and I was in this well-paid job. I would have to like be stingy, and because I felt regret for my actions, I would feel guilty. I'd feel low. And so how would I make myself feel better? I'd go on the site again and I'd chat with someone else, and it would cost money. And, you know, I'd sometimes would meet people that I felt I had a genuine connection with. They just wanted it for the money, and they would just like ignore me, and that's it. And that's their right. Some people I'm still friends with years today. Like even today, and I've met up with them and have really good friendships with them. But it was an addiction. And the thing about addiction is we normally think of it in the terms of like drugs and alcohol. but it's all kinds of behavior. And for me, it destroyed my life to the point where I was so in debt, my parents had to bail me out. And it was the most humiliating thing, because how could I tell my parents of like, why are you out of this money? It's like, oh yeah, because I'm spending it on like cam sites. Well, what's a cam site? Well, let me tell you about that,
Right.
And I've always wanted to speak about it publicly, because speaking about vulnerability is an important thing. Like, as humans, and I've mentioned this before, one of the first videos I did on YouTube was one called Admit to the World You're Not Perfect. Like, we are all incredibly fragile beings that are products of our environment and life choices, or choices based on the choices that are presented to us. And sometimes you don't know you're going down a path until you're really deep in it. And the only way I got out of it was because I finally admitted I had a problem. And I did stop saying to my parents, I need money. Like, but also I wasn't asking them for money. It just got to a point where I was literally paying the bank fees for going overdrawn. And I wasn't able to attend events and stuff because I literally had no money. And it was just this horrific cycle. And I felt shame. I felt instant regret. And it just fed this cycle again and again. And it was something I got out of probably when I was like 28 or something like that. But it was like a never-ending cycle for like a good 1 or 2 years. And it totally destroyed me. And it's really crazy to talk about it now from a position where I know it's in the past now. And it's about where we move forward. So, sorry, that was a really, really long series of stories, but I kind of wanted to, off the back of you opening up about your stuff, it sort of gave me confidence to sort of talk about that, because as individuals, life is very complicated, and it's about what we do with those lessons from the past and how we build to the future. And it's really good that we've been able to do what we have with that.
And I'll say thank God for parents, because I could so many times in my life, I was going, I say I was going down the wrong path, but like most of my life was the wrong path. And luckily they've always been there. To be like, I remember when I lived in Tennessee for about 5 years. And by the end of my time in Tennessee, just an absolute disaster. And thank goodness I had some place to come home to. Cause because if I would have been that guy in the black and white commercial with the dirty mattress on the floor, like so many times, I would have been that guy 20 years ago easily, if it wasn't for my parents. So if you have a good support system in place, if you have great people in your life, like, let them know how much you appreciate them, because there's no way I would be here without my parents. Obviously, but again, later in life, I wouldn't have made it this far. That's for sure.
I'm completely the same as you. I feel incredibly lucky because, obviously, again, one of these choices in life is not everyone gets parents, or they don't get good parents that can be supportive. And in a weird way, that is what fed into the guilt that I was dealing with and the shame, because my parents have done all this for me, and then look how I've sort of repaid them. I feel like I'm letting them down, and so that's why I wouldn't tell them stuff. But it meant I was in a worse situation. And so I'll never forget, there was a moment where I started making progress and I was getting all my finances around, and my parents had access to my bank account so they could see. And I can't remember what happened exactly, but they came and visited. Oh, they came to visit to help, like, clean up my place. Like, they came to help, and I felt so guilty about it. And they mentioned something that needed doing, and I kind of snapped, just out of guilt, like, I'm sorry, I'm shit, and they left. And I literally had a breakdown, and I remember posting on social media, like, I don't know what to do with my life. Like, I don't know what to do right now. I'm in trouble. And someone said, call the Samaritans. And that's something I'd always recommend other people to do. And then I called this number. It was the first time I'd ever done it in my life. And just speaking to someone helped. And then my dad came back. I had posted on Facebook about needing help, but I muted my parents. They didn't see the post because I didn't want them to worry. And then my dad turned up again, and it was because he went home and he'd looked at the finances and he'd seen I was overdrawn again. And my dad was like, what the fuck is going on? And I burst into tears, and I was a complete mess. And I was explaining why I thought he'd come round was for because I'd called the Samaritans and maybe someone had told him and he didn't know it. And I just remember there was this moment when my dad like looked out the back window and he was like, "What are we going to do?" And I felt just such immense regret because I was like, they've done all this for me and I'm trying to get out of this. And like, I felt I'd made progress in my life, but I was, progress doesn't go in a straight line. I always say it zigzags, but right now I'm not doing them well. Like they've done me so well in life and I feel ashamed for that. And that was a really difficult thing that I made a lot of progress with. And my dad, bless him, has I've always talked about, how I just wish one day I could like take my parents on vacation, and treat them to stuff and like pay it back. And my dad told me a phrase that his dad told him, which is, he said, "Pay it forward, Miles." And for me, that is really, it's always stayed with me. And it's really shaped a lot about how I see life. And I've never spoken publicly about this, but and I hope he's not going to mind me saying this, but before Christmas last year, I discovered with my dad that he's unfortunately unwell, and it's not something he's going to recover from, unfortunately. And that was a real shock for me because it brought all these concepts into perspective again. I had a very emotional phone call with him saying that, and by the way, the prognosis at the moment is he's got time, but it's just knowing that there is a limit now on that. And
sorry to hear that, man. Like,
it's one of those weird things of like, it's not okay, but it is okay just because I've gone through that processing thing. But it made me think, as someone who's 34, I want to have family, I want to be in a relationship, I want to have kids, and I don't want to have kids that I tell them about my dad. I want them to meet my dad because meeting him is more than I could ever explain. But that pay it forward thing that he always mentions just makes me, it took the burden off the idea of like, he's just proud that I'm the stuff I'm doing. He's always had my back. He's proud of me and my brother. And that sort of unconditional love is like, yeah, I want to pay it forward, but I want him to see how I pay it forward. And, life is precious. And when people give you chances, you might slip up again. And it might not feel like it's all right in the moment. I mean, most of the times it's not all right. But as long as you keep trying, you will get to a point where you can look back and say, look, I've done it. And I know my parents know the struggle I've gone through. And I think with kind of news like that with my dad, it's kind of put life in a whole new perspective of like what matters. And vitamin G is what I always talk about. His friend introduced me to that term, which is vitamin gratitude. The idea that we always express our gratitude to people long down the line, usually when it's too late, like they're on to other projects and stuff, or maybe they pass away and you've never got to say it at all. And I always say to people, like, when people do good things, tell them now. And so like, every other day I'll send a direct video message on Instagram to like a small business that's treated me well, or a supporter or a friend, and just think of one thing I'm grateful for, because it's when we're in those moments, that's when we need to be cheered on with it. And so like with the stuff that you do with your channel, the reason I've always been happy to cheer you on is because I'm like, no, in the moment you're doing well and you need to keep doing it, Bryan, because it's amazing. And it's why I always appreciate the kind words you say for the stuff that I'm doing. And so sharing stories of vulnerability and issues, the fragility of life, it opens up the space to practice vitamin G and think about, well, based on these negative experiences in life, I'm therefore grateful for these things, and we should all take time to think about it.
Yeah. I certainly couldn't have said it better myself. That's it's amazing. As far as the parents thing's concerned, like I decided a while back, when I was 12, I remember being 12 and going, I don't want to have kids. Like I don't want to have a family of my own. Like, I just want to be able to, like, I just want to play video games for the rest of my life. And like, all I need is a tiny little apartment, blah, 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 whatever. And somehow I managed to, make that work. But so I'm not like, I'm not like trying, I don't want to have grandkids and stuff but there's no real desire for me to like have kids so I can be like, hey, mom and dad, look at baby Miles, or whatever the hell I'd call it, right?
Miles is a good name.
I've heard. But but I do feel like, they've bailed me out so many times, and that they've been there for me so much, and like watched so many of my failures, that like I just want them to be able to see me succeed once. Like that's where I am. Like I don't want to give them grandkids. I want to give them the sense that, hey, I finally found my place in life, and I'm glad that you're here to witness it, and to say it took a lot longer than most people, but I'm here, and I did it, and I found my path. Um,
Yes.
and it and it's crazy because, when I first started the channel, I remember my dad would get mad. My dad would be upset, that like we would swear, and I'm like, Dad, I just gotta be myself. Like I gotta be myself, and like I swear a fucking lot. Like I do. Like I'm like really nice in front of my parents. Like my dad was a teacher, an elementary school teacher, and then eventually became an assistant principal, and then eventually became a principal, all elementary school. So he was been like a little prim and proper, and he kind of, and I always sort of treated him like a principal, even like at home, you know. And so we never really swore around him. Like my mom, when he's not around, will swear, and I'll swear around my mom when he's not around. But when he's around, it's like we don't swear. Um, and so, even though he didn't seem like he was like totally on board with what I was doing and how I was doing it, and he always had input that I wouldn't take. And so now it's kind of nice, like fast forwarding a few years, like they my mom watches the channel. Like she has no desire to play VR. She has no interest in video games whatsoever. But my mom watches the channel, and she loves watching the subscriber count climb, and and she loves watching the Patreon support climb. Because these are the metrics that she can use to measure my success, right? Say that he's doing the thing, and it's working, and that there are more people interested in what he's doing now more than ever, and look, people are giving him money to do this. And so having my parents on board, and like having them like witness some level of success, is like, it's amazing. Like, and it kind of snuck up on me, like, because for years and years it didn't seem like it was going to be anything. It looked like it was going to be this fun little hobby that no one was ever going to watch, and I was just going to do because I like doing it. And I'm just thrilled that like my parents get to see this happen.
I mean, for me, the meaning of life is legacy. It's creating things that outlive yourself, like your physical being on this planet. And that can be, in the most simple ways, it can be having kids. That's a legacy. But it can also be creating projects. So like, the inspiration you have, you're basically building a community, and your videos, my videos, they will all be online after we are gone, and will forever, bring people joy in some ways. And it was interesting, you were mentioning right at the start about how when you were in really dark times that like Podcast Beyond brought you and in some way saved you.
Yeah.
I mentioned this on a previous podcast, and I know that when I do these podcasts there's a lot of stories and things I might mention again, but in different contexts I think it's important. I was talking about someone I knew who is a presenter on a big show in entertainment. And last year during the pandemic, I got a job in a factory building respiratory equipment for hospitals just because I needed a job, and it was minimum wage. It was something to do. And he messaged me and said, "It's amazing that you're doing that. I'm here just doing his show and stuff like that. It's not of any significant importance." And I said, "Dude, when I get home and I've had a tough day, I can watch you and I can feel happy. Like, that is what society is. It's about we can't do everything. It's like with activism. If you don't share a petition or a tweet on a certain issue, oh, it must mean you don't care. That's absolute bullshit. We've only got so much time and energy in the day, and society unfortunately, we get so like focused on like, here's the news story of the day or the issue of the day, and so everyone must be on it or they care. No, society requires people to do all sorts. You need entertainers. You need people to do the more grotty jobs. You need people to do the more high-end, sophisticated jobs. Like, people need to do what they do. And what we find, I think, in the UK at the moment, we've got issues with we've got a low amount of HGV drivers. We've basically got a fuel crisis at the moment. Like, it's hard to get fuel for your car because there's not enough. We've got enough fuel. We just don't have enough drivers. And so people are now starting to go, oh, why haven't we got enough drivers? Like, you know, stuff doesn't just turn up at supermarkets. You know, we get so lost in like just everything is accessible, and we forget, no, actually it requires people to put it on the shelves, people to pick the food, to take it from A to B. And I think that we sometimes just forget the humanity of like what makes things work. And so, you know, some people can be incredibly, it can lash out on other people. But in the instance of my friend, he was just like very self-critical on him, saying that, is what I'm doing important? Yes, it is important because it's bringing joy and happiness, and like culture and the arts is something that is very important in society because it lifts spirits, and that is just as important as people that do jobs like, you know, doctors. You know, doctors could be doing a really important surgery. Well, you know what? They need music to listen to. They need like a show to help them switch off and, you know, deal with maybe a traumatic day. And so it's all a piece of the puzzle. And so, yeah.
Dude, to kind of bring it full circle, I know when we started this, you know, at the beginning of the show, we were talking about, or I was talking about Podcast Beyond, and, you know, what inspired me to kind of start doing my own thing. What's crazy is that, you know, that show and those people, the hosts of those shows, helped me through, like I said, the darkest period of my life, some really, really dark times. And I remember when I started, you know, even when I was like, you know, I think this will only be something that I'm doing for fun. In the back of my mind, I was always thinking, if this ever helps anybody, like even one person,
That's it.
Beyond helped me, then I'll feel like, you know, this was this project, this experiment, this thing that I'm doing was a total success. And I get emails and messages from people all the time saying that, and I'm like, in the fact to know that it's been many more than one person that our show has helped, that our channel has helped, you know, through some dark times, is just so moving and just so monumental. Like the community is, you know, people try to give you credit for things, like, oh, you've created this amazing community. I was like, the community created this great community, right? Like I'm just some guy that like I'm making videos in my bedroom, right, in my 450 square foot apartment, like in this little corner, and you know, and I suffer from depression, and I'm a recovering alcoholic and a recovering drug addict, and I'm, you know, definitely not the guy that you would look to create an amazing community full of amazing people that help each other out and love each other and are accepting of everybody. That doesn't sound like me, right? I am accepting of everybody and I love everybody, and I think, you know, that some of the shit that's happening in the world right now is insane, but I don't talk about that stuff. It's the community that kind of like built up around me, that like kind of saved me, that kind of is saving each other. And so, like, you know, people like to give me credit for it, but I don't think I had anything to do with it. Somehow we just attracted the most amazing people on the face of the planet, and it's been really moving.
But you definitely do deserve credit for it, and I know what you mean though, is because you didn't intend it to go that way, but you took the bold step to move in that direction from what you had before, and you use Discord for your community, and Discord is something I only really started using because of your community. I've used it a few times before, but it's like a voice chat, but you have different rooms. Oh, sorry, it's like a text chat, but you do have voice chat on it. And there's been times where I've been in the voice chat, and there'll be people that I've never met before that are just chatting about games, and someone goes, I lost someone, I'm really struggling, and like everyone's there and supportive and saying, if you need space, you need space, but if you need to talk, and you've always been like that with people, and it's incredibly moving, the sort of the sense of belonging and togetherness that is given to a lot of people. And, you know, again, I think the reason, for example, I mean, this episode took a massive turn 1 hour in when we started to, like, unexpected, but that's the beauty of it. But it's kind of like we don't know what is behind the one side we see of someone. Like, when you meet a person, you're sort of meeting an idea, you're seeing them in that context. If they're on a video, They might just be seeing your review videos. So this is the reviewer. They don't know anything
Right.
about where you've come from, like what you struggle with, what you've learned, or what your passions are. And life is complicated like that. Like, we all do have these things behind us, and it's amazing when you can build these communities around a common denominator, but then it also brings the rest in. And it reminds me when I started going to YouTube gatherings, like the first one I went to was 777, which was in New York, so in 2007, and there was maybe 200, 300 people there. And, I was meeting people that were comedians, people that might have been chefs, people that did stunts, people doing sports channels, stuff I didn't care about. But because the commonality was we make videos, we were sharing that experience, and there was a real sense of like, it was like the glue that keeps people together. And so having those like touching points of commonality, and in the sense of virtual reality, it's a really good shared experience, because the very nature of playing multiplayer VR games is shared experience, and people talking about, this is what I experienced, it felt like this, you should feel this as well. And that is like what empathy is. Empathy is being in someone else's shoes, and like virtual reality is a way of being in someone else's shoes. Unfortunately, sometimes it's being in a really horrific abandoned house in the middle of nowhere with some psychopath killer chasing you. But other times it could be going in a cage deep into the ocean. And yeah, okay, there are sharks. That's not so good. But there are nice experiences as well. And that is the beauty of VR.
It's true. It really is, man. It really is. Dude.
Something else I was thinking about like weeks ago, like when I was thinking of geeky virtual reality ideas, and it's only because I spoke earlier about my dad, but my dad was who got me into gaming growing up. I think one of the first, he had a PC first, so I played like a game called Centurion, which
I remember that.
Do you remember that? You had to conquer the whole map, and that I loved it. He had, actually, even before that, when I was very little, there was this like teddy bear game, and actually he found it like 10 years ago, and I literally almost burst into tears, because instantly the music of that game, it was like the most like basic music. It took me back to being like 3 or 4 or wherever it was. But they bought me my first console, a Master System, Sega Master System, and on PC, I got introduced to Doom and Duke Nukem, and Duke Nukem, this first-person shooter, had a parents lock on it, and I managed to trick my dad into getting the password so I could unlock the adult mode and stuff like that. But my dad got me into a lot of gaming, but later in life, he just doesn't game anymore, and that's fine, because he wants to do other things. But virtual reality is the gaming that he's like, no, I want to have a go at this, and it's been a really good sort of, I think it's just because in VR, it's not like holding a controller and knowing what all the buttons does is very difficult. Like, I think as gamers that have done it for decades, we kind of take it for granted. Like, you have to hold down this, and then you opens up what these buttons do. Whereas the Master System, you had up, down, left, right, and 2 buttons. That was it. And the both buttons did the same thing. And that was the same with arcade things. Whereas VR, it's sort of, 2 arms, 2 controllers, and like Beat Saber he loves. Now, Beat Saber,
that's easy. No buttons, man. Just swing your arms.
Exactly.
Right?
So Beat Saber was the game I mentioned right at the start, which is where you're slicing blocks to music, and it's so visceral. And music is really good for fitness because it keeps you going. So when you're playing a game where the game is the music and doing the beat, it's just so good. And they don't have multiplayer yet for PlayStation, but from what I've seen from it on PC is you're sort of on this runway with the blocks coming towards you that you slice, and you can see other people playing around, like playing the same song along with you, and you can get eliminated. And this is just a really like soppy thought I had. But when I think about, there are people that I've known on YouTube who passed away, and their videos are there forever, which I was talking about legacy. But I kind of feel like as a feature on Beat Saber, and because my dad plays Beat Saber, I was thinking about this was, in the old racing games, you would have like ghost cars. So like if your friend set a score, you wouldn't be racing at the same time. But if they have a top score, when you then race on the track, you see that semi-transparent ghost. Yeah. It might be of your own car of doing it. So then you've actually, what you've got to beat to get around the track. I was like, if I made a request to the creators of Beat Saber, it is that I would love for them to bring a ghost mode that if you set a score, it would record a ghost of that person playing it. And this is the soppy bit. Because I love playing Beat Saber with my dad, I thought I like the idea of him being immortalized, that I could get a song that he plays on it, and decades in the future, if I'm lucky to live that long, I could always play Beat Saber along with my dad. And I like the idea of that. And I don't know, I'm going to have to request it to them some point. But like, I think that that's an example of like how virtual reality and technology could really store memories, because you're basically digitizing experience, and like as people become more real in it, there are obviously, I'm going to say, dangers. There are risks to it of like, do you create false attachment? Does it actually stop with people's abilities to get over stuff? I can think of shows like Black Mirror and you know, all these other ones that ask really interesting questions about what it is to be human. But you often hear about stories about people remembering family members and things that they enjoyed. And I kind of feel like in the virtual space, there are opportunities for that as well. But yeah, I didn't know really where to go with that, but that was just something that came to mind, tying a lot of the things that we've spoken about on this episode. I mean,
it would be even better if you could play Beat Saber with your dad on Mars.
On Mars, yes. Yeah, and that, he would love that as well, because he's really into space and stuff like that. I mean, I think is it his granddad? I did a video about it ages ago. I did a video about the fact that we're living in a world now where technological advancement is happening so rapidly that it's conditioning society to no longer say it's a question of if, but when. And I think that makes us quite optimistic. And I think it was his granddad. He was born, can't remember what year, but in his lifetime, the Wright brothers created the first plane, and he also saw man on the moon. Like, in his lifetime, like in the span of one human life, going from humans learning to fly to landing on the moon. And it's just like, it's incredible. Like, and when I think of, you know, where gaming, you talked about games with just one pixel on a screen, you know, that was what, you know, 20, 30 years ago. You know, with Pong and stuff like that, it's where are we going to be in another 20 years? And as you say, it's more than just about the frame rate and the graphics. It's about the immersion. And everybody watching, we're all going to be downloading ourselves into these virtual worlds. It's happening. It's inevitable.
It's crazy. You were like one pixel 20 or 30 years ago. And it took me a second to realize what year we're in, that we're actually in 2021. And that 20 years ago, like the PlayStation 2 was already out. It's like, holy crap.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I recommend to everyone look on YouTube at, like, they've got like every year of games, and it shows you the graphics and how far it's come, and it's always an absolute joy to see. So Bryan, I mean, to tie this all up, I mean, you and I could chat for another 2 hours, no doubt. But when it comes to PSVR without parole, you've touched upon this already, because like I go into the Discord and there's this bubbling community, so many, you know, hundreds of people are involved. It's the biggest PSVR show in the world, and I know that you say, well, it's because PSVR isn't like the most popular thing, but the point is you were there when it was unpopular, and you've helped create a community for it, and that requires
and I'm still there now that it's unpopular again. We've gone full circle. Yeah.
But the new device is going to come out for PlayStation next year, and so you're really hitting away with it. But like that doesn't just come out of nowhere. That comes from, you know, some of it is by chance, but it's also about opportunity. I think we always have to keep those things in mind, that, you know, luck does come down to it. And again, I think about what my dad says. My dad has had a really impressive life, where he started off as a mechanic for British Airways, and then the last job he had was he was vice president for an American health company that was trying to take away from profiteering over getting people medication, but actually helping people, making insurance companies basically strive for quicker recovery, because then you save money, which obviously the American healthcare system, we can get into that on another conversation. But like, he's had such an impressive story, and when I tell him how proud I am, he's always like, I've been incredibly lucky. But he does say, but I did take the opportunities and risks when they were there. And that is the balance that comes in life. And so I just wanted you to end by talking a bit about, for people listening that perhaps have maybe a niche hobby or a little passion project, and they're like, because you always look at the end product. So I want to do a gaming channel. Oh, PSVR out Pro. I'm never going to compete with that. But you, once upon a time, were just one person that put a Craigslist thing out there. So what would you say to people that, have something they want to try and maybe are feeling a bit nervous about it?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds a little cliche to say this, but the real answer is just do it. And you'll say, well, but I don't have this and I need that. And I get emails all the time saying, hey, I want to start reviewing PlayStation VR games. What do I do? Like, what kind of hardware do you need? What blah blah blah, whatever. And like I said, when we did the very first episode of Gaming Without Parole, I just had the cheapest little GoPro and I stuck it to a wall. I had no idea if it was even filming us, but that was what I had, and I don't think anybody should be going out there and spending thousands of dollars on a new computer or video capturing devices or camcorders or anything else. They literally look around and see what you have. I always make the joke that Without Parole is held together with duct tape and wire coat hangers, and even though that's pretty indicative of how my vehicle runs, it's not totally far-fetched for the channel either. It's really like you just got to work with what you've got, because there's no way, like, for 99.9% of people out there who are doing something along these lines, the returns aren't going to pay for all that, right? So you're not, if you start trying to spend a lot of money because you want to do something professional, that's just not reasonable, right? Because if your thing doesn't take off, then now, like, you've got all this expensive equipment that you're not using, so that's terrible. And on top of it, I think a lot of people just want to jump in and start doing things right away. I don't, and I think you should start. I think you should jump in and start doing things right away. But you should do it with whatever you've got available. If what you have is your cell phone, you have to point it at the television to capture the video, and then upload that to your computer, and talk over it. Do whatever you've got to do. The funny thing is like I don't even think that us at Without Parole are where we'd like to be in terms of our technical prowess, in terms of our show hosting abilities. Anything. I tell AJ all the time, who's my co-host on PSVR Gamescast Live, I was like, all we're doing is practicing for the future. Like, it's really nice that people are watching while we're practicing, but all we're doing is practicing, because with any luck, one day this will explode and be amazing. In PlayStation, if PlayStation VR 2 comes out and it's the biggest VR headset ever, and everybody loves it and everybody comes flooding into the channel, well, then that's what we're practicing for. Right. And so, sometimes we'll finish a show and AJ will be like, well, that wasn't a very good show. And sometimes I'll say, oh, that wasn't a very good show. But I say, well, let's learn from that. And because this is just practice for the future. So jump into it and do it. And if it sucks, it sucks. But you know what? It's taken me 6 years to not suck. and I love looking back. I love looking back at the early stuff I've done and been like, wow, why did I think that was good? Right. And then the following year, I'll look back at the stuff I was doing the year before and go, wait, that I thought I knew what was good last year, and I didn't. Like, I didn't realize that. Wow, that really sucked. And so when you keep looking back and realizing that you keep never stop learning, and never stop trying to get better. Always practice. But if you don't just start somewhere, if you don't just start, then you'll never get better. And I know that it sounds so cliche. Like, if I want to review games, well, then review games. I was reviewing games long before I started a YouTube channel. I remember when I was applying for a job at IGN, and I wrote a bunch of reviews. I wrote a bunch of op-eds, and just pieces. I wrote an article about the Dead Space series called "The Demise of a Franchise," and basically went through Dead Space 1, 2, and 3 and talked about like how it went from greatness to horrible in the course of just a few years. I wrote an entire piece about.
Do you still have these articles
in notebook somewhere? Because I didn't type them out. I just wrote them in a notebook, and so they're somewhere. They Awesome. Are definitely somewhere. I wrote an entire article called "And It Was All Yellow" about how Uncharted trains you to climb on only things that are yellow. So you're constantly like looking around for yellow things to climb. It's so just whatever you've got, whether it's a notebook and a pen, like start reviewing games with your notebook and a pen. And if you finally get a GoPro, then you can take the next step.
Yeah, it's a really important point because the audience expectation is what you present with them first. So if you just start with what you've got, the audience will be like, I like this content and this is what it is. And then as your audience grows, you can start investing in more and more stuff and the quality will go over time and there'll be a sense of progress. If you just go with all this expensive stuff that you might end up not using, as you say, then it can be a waste and you won't progress. You won't be, by having less, you actually become more innovative and creative. And you get the systems in place, so you're more. It's the whole thing in business that when you just give people a massive load of money, there's going to be a lot of waste because they're not having to be economical with what they've got. So I've written down on this notepad. So every Friday, I'm trying to get into a habit on my Instagram where I just, with a felt tip, write on a pad a quote that I like, and then I take a photo of it with some cool lighting, and I post it on my Instagram. I'm actually going to quote you for tomorrow's one, or maybe next week's if I don't do one tomorrow. But you put, I've written it out like this: we are just practicing for the future. I love that, man. I think it's such a really, really good quote. And my audience is going to hate me.
That's how I feel about dating too, man. Like,
well, it applies in everything, yeah. And
it really does.
I always talk about my favourite lyric, which is "We're just rehearsing who we think we are," from a heavy metal band called Misery Signals, because for me that is the human condition. Just any situation, we're just rehearsing who we are. We're always changing. We're always just playing out, like in this podcast, okay, well, this is how I'm supposed to be, so this is how I'm going to behave, and that is it. But I do like the idea of investing in the future. Of we are always just practicing for the future. It's a really, really, really good note. So Bryan, everyone should check out PSVR Without Parole on YouTube. If you are a PSVR gamer, check them out on Discord. All those details are on their YouTube page. And if you've never had a chance to try virtual reality, just try and find someone who's got it and just say, "Can I just come over and just have a go?" Because it is absolutely wonderful. And whether it's a sports game or a racing game, or just there are some experiences where you don't have to control anything. You can just sit there and look around, like on a roller coaster or something like that. Like, there is something out there for everyone. I highly recommend it. But Bryan, like, discovering you and connecting, and you've been very kind to allow me to be a co-host on a couple of your shows in the past, which I've always really enjoyed. I've been a gamer longer than I've been a content creator, so it scratches that itch for me. And the community is just so supportive, and one of the reasons I knew we'd have a good conversation today, although the second half I didn't expect it to go in that direction, but I completely welcome it and feel it was good therapy for us both. And hopefully
it definitely feels like a 2-hour therapy session right now.
Yeah. But the connection I definitely find is that there is a real sense of inclusion and empathy within the community, even though it's built just upon gaming. I take gaming very seriously, but people, I think less so these days, but people always thought gaming was just kind of this shallow waste of time. But it's like, no, it is community building. It is about skills, skill building and connections and teamwork. And, there's a lot of negativity as well. There's a lot of divisiveness with, like, teams against other teams, swearing at each other. But I think virtual reality, for those reasons you mentioned about, it humanizes other people. It kind of makes people just treat others with a lot more dignity, and that's when gaming is at its best.
I agree. Absolutely agree.
Awesome. Bryan, thanks so much for coming on the show, dude.
Dude, thank you for having me. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Definitely.